All right, so thank you to everybody for joining this morning. Carole Fay, our state SAE specialist, is with us to discuss some unconventional and non-traditional SAE projects, give some very experience-based advice and guidance, as well as best practices on how you can help students navigate through those. And Carole, you can go ahead and start your presentation, share screen if you like.
Okie dokie. Good morning, everybody. Let's see which one. There we are. I think that's it. Can you guys all see the PowerPoint? Okay. So I don't like to use PowerPoint a lot, but it's going to keep me on track and keep me focused. And so that'll be very helpful today. So we're going to talk today about untraditional SAE project ideas. And so to prepare for this, what I did is I went online and I'm in Facebook. I'm on a lot of ag ed discussion kind of groups. So I went in and did some searching about untraditional SAE projects. And so that's where I gathered a lot of my information, and some of it's referenced with teachers' names that provided it, some of it's not. So you can just know where I got all this. It's not all my things that I've developed. So I'm brought to you today by the Center for Professional and Personnel Development at Penn State, and also the Pennsylvania Commission for Excellence in Agricultural Education and PAAE. So if I can get this to move, there we are. So our goals today, some things that we're going to do. We're going to review the definition of SAE a little bit and go over that. We're going to discuss and review the purpose of SAE. Determine the impact of SAE on our students, develop ways to reach those untraditional kind of students and help them find career-based SAE projects. And then we're going to have a question and answer time for SAE for all. So the first thing is a definition of SAE, kind of to just get us all focused and get us ready for the conversation today. So the newer up-to-date definition of SAE from the Ag Ed Council is a student-led, instructor-supervised, and the instructor-supervised part could actually be a mentor as well. Work-based learning experience that results in measurable outcomes within a predefined, agreed-upon set of AFNR technical standards and career-ready practices aligned to a career plan of study. So you can see some other comments about what SAE is. The main part of this is that it's a critical component of a comprehensive career and tech ed program. So we all know that we have the three-circle model with classroom, SAE, and FFA. So for the moment, we're going to put FFA, the FFA degrees and awards to the side, because a lot of times people focus on, you know, you're going to have this SAE project and it's going to aim you toward a proficiency degree or a keystone degree or, you know, whatever kind of FFA award or degree. So if we put those FFA degrees and awards kind of on the back burner right now and just focus on what's going to be good for the student, that will help kind of our mentality for today. So the first thing I'd like to do, and you guys can unmute yourselves. I think John and Beth have given you the option to do that. Can somebody describe a traditional ag student for me? Jenny, what is, if you're still available, can you describe what one of your traditional ag students looks like as far as their projects go?
Traditional would probably be like kid growing up on a dairy farm. They have their dairy herd as a SAE.
Okay, and why do you think they have those projects or that kind of project? Because they grew up on the dairy farm, right?
Right, and then they're showing and things like that.
So do any of those kids ever have any kind of projects other than their dairy cow or dairy related projects?
Sometimes they'll have a job like working on the farm, or some get jobs off the farm.
Okay, but it's pretty much related to their maybe their dairy experience, and that's okay because that's what they have available and that's what their interests are. So the next slide I have is a comment or a quote, if you will, by a teacher. And he says, when I finally quit worrying about contests and proficiency awards and degrees and really looked at SAE as a tool for career exploration, it became much easier to have every student have some type of SAE. He had to break his mind from the idea of project and look at it more about college and career readiness and where the kids are on that continuum. And then he continues with that circle of my 3-circle model is egg-shaped, probably toward FFA, but at least it's not a pinpoint. For second and third year student and fourth year students, they need to move toward an immersion SAE, but some will only have foundational. So a lot of you, I think, are using or you're familiar with SAE for all. And so we have that basic foundational SAE project where they can do a career exploration kind of thing. So when they do that career exploration, maybe they determine or they find out that, you know, I want to do this career, or maybe the things I like to do are going to aim me toward that career, but I don't have a lot of skills in that career path. So maybe there's some type of SAE project I can do that will help me get those skills, whether it's ag-related or whether it's not. So again, SAE is student-led, and if it's their idea, they will do it, but we have to have some supervision and we have to have some feedback from a teacher. And a new concept in SAE is a mentor. So it could be a parent, it could be a boss at a job, it could just be somebody who's experienced in the area that the student wants to have the SAE in. But somebody has to be monitoring and mentoring that SAE project, because if somebody isn't checking on them, if you want to use that terminology, they're not going to complete it. So we know that in SAE for All, they do the foundational career search SAE. Are any of you guys using SAE for All? Crickets? Lindsay, are you doing SAE for All? Are you using that?
I have not used it yet.
Okay. Do you know how to access it? Like, do you know how to find the SAE for All information?
Kind of, yes. Like I remember looking it up at one point, probably last summer, but didn't do much with it this school year.
Okay, and that's fine. So SAE for All is found on saeforall.org, and there are guidebooks there for teachers and students. There are activities that kids go through. So if you happen to be virtual this fall at all, getting your kids to go through SAE for All might be really helpful to you and to them. Some teachers have the kids copy their SAE for All, the activities, into a Google Drive or somehow that you can access it, and they answer the questions and do the activities, and then you can access those and grade those. So that works really well. So let's talk about our untraditional ag students. So we know the traditional ag kids maybe live on a dairy farm, maybe they show pigs, sheep, whatever. They, you know, maybe they have a job working at Tractor Supply. But what are some of these untraditional ag students? Jesse, what are some untraditional ag kids that you might have?
For me, since that means, okay, there it is, sorry. For me, for untraditional, I have one that does restoration and work on automotives as well as drag racers. And then I have one who has a job, but it is in the local hardware store. So those would be the two untraditionals that I have currently. But in the past, I've had kids who were in STEM club and used their projects. I've had some that were working on getting more of like nonprofit activities and community service things started, things like that.
Okay, those are great examples. So If we have a student like your drag racer student, maybe he's in a mechanics class and he says, okay, I'm really interested in engines and I'm really interested in how mechanics, you know,
What do you need, bud?
how engines work and that kind of thing. But maybe he doesn't have access to his family's lawnmower or whatever, but he's interested in drag racing. So go ahead and let him do the drag racing project. And it could be maybe if he doesn't have any financial, I'm going to say interest in it, it could be unpaid placement. Or if he's doing some type of research with that, it could be a research project. So those are great projects for students to do. Let's see, Lindsay, do you have any kids who are untraditional ag students?
I do. I would say like a lot of my kids, like, I'm sorry, we have lots of
It's
noises
okay.
here.
Go ahead.
Like more like gardening and plant-based SAEs is what I've been seeing more of.
Okay, so they're probably doing those as either entrepreneurship type projects or maybe paid or unpaid placement, and those are great. So we're going to keep going. So some leading questions, if you have the kids do the SAE for all and they come up with, okay, so this is a career I want to do and here are some skills that I would like to learn about. We need some leading questions to help them take that SAE project to the next level. So some kids might say to you, a classic question is, why do I have to do an SAE project? So here's some information that might be helpful for you. So you can say 1 out of 5 jobs in the US are directly connected to agriculture. And that means even if you don't want to farm, it's very likely that your career is going to be connected to the ag industry. And they might think about, I eat, maybe I work at a grocery store, maybe I work at a farmer's market, and they're not realizing how that ties back to agriculture. So so the SAE project will give you the opportunity to explore your own involvement in the ag industry. It might provide you with an opportunity to explore and build skills for potential future careers. And you'll get a grade for the work you do outside the classroom. And a lot of kids don't understand, especially the younger ones, that not all learning happens at school. So some other things, and now we're looking at untraditional SAE projects. So some questions that you might ask them: what do you do outside of school? What do you do after school? And when you're not sitting in school, what are you doing? If you had time this afternoon to do anything you wanted to do, what would it be? If you could go on a trip to anywhere, where would you go? What is your favorite food? What is your favorite sport or team? What is your favorite class in school? Or what is your favorite movie? So once you get some answers from those non-traditional kids, maybe they have a favorite food. Maybe pizza is their favorite food. Okay. So then we can build on that answer. So if it's a favorite food, we can look at, how do you make that food? What ingredients are in it? What's the nutritional value? Maybe have them find a recipe and make it using a variety of ingredients. Record the observations of the impact of those ingredients and develop recipes for allergens. So the other day I made zucchini brownies, and as I went through the recipe, because I have a lot of zucchini right now, like everybody does, I was thinking, wow, of the different ingredients that are in there, how could I change that recipe to make it better, make it different? And so that could be a very good SAE project. And sometimes people think that SAE projects have to last 2 or 3 years, or they have to invest beaucoup bucks. None of that. It can be a couple week-long project, or they could start very basic. I'm going to make pizza, and then it can build into something else. So maybe their favorite place to go. They could determine how to get there. How much is it going to cost? Where to stay? What to eat while they're there? What's the climate like? What kind of wildlife is there? Plants that are there, maybe jobs that are there, and the kind of housing. So now, again, you can take that, maybe this summer they were planning to go to Yellowstone. I know some of you have been there. So how would you go to get there? How would you map out the route? So that could be an SAE project. Some kids like sports, and you can see all the different ideas I came up with different sports. If the sport is played in a different country, what are some of the rules that are there? You know, we all get those kids who want to be a professional football player, baseball player, whatever. Okay, so how much do they get paid, but what are the expectations of those players? So they could do a little report on the different sports that they might be interested in. They could do a project at home. If they have a yard, however big the yard is, what type of plants are there? What kind of grass is there? Lindsay, what can I help you with?
So when you have them do this type of project, like how do you have them, like if they do this report, like what, I guess like how do you have them present it, or like, are you going to go into that? I'm sorry if you are.
No, actually, nope, but I want to answer your question though. So again, on I don't know, one of the Facebook things, they did like an agri-science type of fair where they invited maybe the 9th graders in, you know, an SAE night. And some of the kids did some type of display where they talked about the project that they did and what they learned. So in your ag class, they could, you know, you could say, all right, we're going to start these projects on this day. For example, in my ag mechanics class, when I was teaching intro to mechanics, I had them all, I gave the kids, and I didn't call it an SAE project, I called it a project. So I gave them a list of topics that they could research. If there were 15 kids in the class, I put 20 things on the list so that the last kid wasn't stuck with whatever the last thing was. And if they were interested in something that wasn't on my list, then that was okay too. But on that list, I had focused things for the class. Like for example, in an intro to mechanics class, you always had somebody that was interested in underwater welding. So I had that on the list. Or I had skills or techniques that they could learn and demonstrate to the class that maybe wasn't going to be part of my class, but it was something related to the class. So they would research all of that, and I would have little deadlines, like maybe if I presented it on Monday, by Friday they had to have their topic picked. By the next week they had to have some kind of an outline done, or in the next week they had to have their research done. So then maybe after 4 weeks, I would have them do a 2-minute presentation on whatever their topic was. So that was just a kind of a short-term project. And I gave them some time in class to work on it, but not all the time. And not all the time, they had to do some of the work on it outside of class. Okay. So with foundational SAE projects now, it's become more opportunity that kids can do some of that work during the school day, but the immersion SAE focus, most of that is outside of the scheduled class time. Lindsay, do you have your hand up? Or Jesse, I can't tell who might have their hand up.
I don't, but I have a question.
Okay.
So I have a set club period that happens every day when we're physically in the building. Would it be manageable or acceptable for me we only have FFA meetings once a month, but to use the rest of that time to have this class come down and this is your time to work on your SAE, ask any questions, anything like that, instead of taking it from the class time?
Sure, you make it work for you, whatever works best for you. And when I was teaching, we had the kids do daily journals, and we became a one-to-one school. So they did, in mechanics or floriculture or whatever, we did a daily journal. This is what I did, this is what I learned. And then on Friday or a day of the week, we went into AET and had them in the classroom section record the different things that they did each day. And so after if it was on a Friday, they would record their classroom work. And then as I was grading those, if they had some extra time, they could work on their SAE records at that time. So we found the more they were exposed to AET and the more they had to use it, the more they were likely to use it and keep it up. So, but whatever works for you, if it's more conducive to your school and your situation to have kids do it during a club time, that's great. That's great. Does that answer your question?
Yes, that answered it. Thank you.
Sure. Okay, so back to the project at home. If they have shrubs at their house, if you're in a landscaping kind of class, or even in an animal science class, if they're interested in something they have in their yard, or they're interested in landscape design, they could identify with all the different apps that are out there for plant identification. They could figure out what kind of plants they have in their yard, and maybe if they were going to replace something, is there something else maybe better that they could replace it with? So in their neighborhood, they could mow people's yards. As I drive around in my area, often you might see a house that needs some work. Maybe the lawn hasn't been mowed, and maybe there's somebody who lives in that house who has some kind of an issue. So you have the parents help the student. You know, maybe there's maybe at a local church, they could contact the church and say, is there somebody in your church who might need some extra help, whether it's weeding their lawn, weeding their flower beds or something. And that could be a project for the students. Maybe a neighbor needs their dog walked. As it starts to snow, shovel snow. With all of these people working from home, maybe a neighbor could use some help with their childcare. Maybe they could, maybe the ag student could go in and just play with the kids for a couple hours and give the parent a break. Somebody, I think it was Mike and Poorman, if you're friends with her on Facebook, as things started to lock down, her kids had done a children's book that they wrote that was ag related, and she went on Facebook Live. It was awesome, and she read their books. It was great. So you could have kids, if they like to write, they could do children's books that explain some aspect of the ag industry, and it was just awesome. It could be something as simple as the alphabet and different animals or different fruit that begins with each letter of the alphabet. So that could be pretty cool. So there are a lot of SAE ideas. If you go to, I'll leave this up for a second. If you go to ffa.org, and there's a whole video center there and an SAE video library with all kinds of SAE ideas. There are lesson plans out there and a lot of activities for students. One place that I found a lot of SAE ideas, believe it or not, is Pinterest. So if you go to Pinterest and you search SAE ideas, I'm going to show you in a second some of the ideas that I found on Pinterest. So my sister is involved with a nonprofit in New Jersey, and they have kids, they work with young kids, and they make seed bombs. So in these seed bombs are native plants. So they make these seed bombs and then they distribute them out in their community, and young kids love them. It's kind of like making mud pies, but you mix, it's a seed mix that's in that. And those are a lot of fun to make, and kids just love it. So here's some research projects, and it can be very simple. Some of these little research projects have won Agri-Science Fair. They don't have to be, acres and acres of grass. It could be just a simple research project like this. They could develop a growing calendar for different kinds of vegetables. If you have a student who likes to paint, or they're artistically talented, they could find stones and they could make stones. People buy these. They could make some money selling garden markers. Here's some more Pinterest SAE ideas. Pallets are cheap and easy to come by. They could do a pallet garden. And there's some other examples. You could do a simple bee water station for your garden. And then they could observe it. How many bees do they see? Like if they're observing it, I don't know, from 1 to 2 o'clock every afternoon, how many different bees do they see, or how many different butterflies do they see? Here's a cool little pathway in a garden that I found. If you have flower pots, they could make a gnome home. Here's some more ideas for pallets and a game that they could make. So I came across a student who liked to crochet, and she actually did an SAE project on crocheting. So she made some lap blankets and then donated them to a local nursing home. So there are also mothers' homes for, you know, where mothers, where ladies go that would be glad to have a baby Afghan. So there are all kinds, and a lot of FFA chapters do this. They make those tie blankets and they could donate those. And people, if you go to Goodwill or some of the community aid stores, people have donated fabric, and they could get fabric or yarn and very cheaply, and or they could ask the people in the community, you know, this is what I'm doing. Do you have any yarn that I could use? Or they could do a little research deal and get alpaca yarn or sheep yarn or whatever, and crochet something with that, and then see, you know, compare the end product and see which one they like best. So it doesn't have to be it doesn't have to be, I'll say artificial yarn. It could be, you know, they could use cotton, they could use wool. There's all kinds of opportunities. Again, you could tie it back to ag. So they could do course-related bulletin boards. Again, this is if you're getting, you know, back in school. They could, if you know that you're going to have a unit coming up on something to do with animal science, they could do an animal science related game as a bulletin board, and that could be an SAE project. They could build an instrument, a guitar or violin. I found plans for building instruments. They could repair a skateboard. There was a student who was interested in skateboarding, and so they looked at different kinds of materials to actually build the skateboard, and different kinds of wheels to use and where to put the wheels on the skateboard. So now you're talking about some physics in there. They could teach somebody how to do some kind of skill. They could do photography. They could develop a children's book on animals. They could also take pictures of SAE projects for other kids. I found one student who had hooked up with a landscaper to take pictures of their finished landscape projects, or as they were working on their landscape projects, the kids took in process pictures for the landscaper. So some journaling things, they could install speakers in a car, they could put up insulation. There's just a whole list of things that I found that really anything could be an SAE project. So as they're going through and doing their SAE project, they want to make sure that they're journaling the steps they're doing and the skills that they're learning. And they want to have set up a plan at the very beginning of the project, because we all know that having a good plan or a thorough plan really helps the project move along. So they could take, you know, record the measurements they make. They could take pictures before and after and the skills that they're learning. They need to analyze the project as it's moving along. What mistakes did they make? What did they learn? And we need to focus too on the safety aspect of our SAE projects. Sometimes we forget about how important safety is with these SAE projects that the kids are doing. So the steps that they're taking to keep safe should be journaled as well. I'm kind of babbling on. Does anybody have any questions at this point? So some other SAE ideas that I found, childcare, again, you could make an animal ID game. You could take the kids, obviously depending on how old they are, but you could play in a creek and find critters in the creek. They could find, you know, animals, like if they have chipmunks around their house. What do the chipmunks eat? Where do they live? What do they do? They could create, somebody on a website I found created and sold their own line of organic makeup. And that actually was a national proficiency finalist. So I thought that was kind of interesting. Here's one, created a decorating business for holidays and events. So if somebody was going to have, and I've seen some of these just lately on Facebook, where kids were having birthday parties and maybe they liked cows, and so they developed a cow themed birthday party. So you could get a cow costume and go out and do cow themed birthday parties. Here's some other ideas. I know that every county in Pennsylvania has a Master Gardener program, and those Master Gardener programs are just excited to work with high school kids or kids at any level to do any kind of projects. So if you have somebody who wants to do a really good SAE project, all they would have to do is contact the Master Gardener group in their county or in their area, and they would team up with them, and that would be awesome. So you can, here's another one. Somebody created metal art using scrap silver. If you go to yard sales or they go to antique shops or whatever, people get rid of their old silverware, or, you know, maybe a neighbor has silverware that they would want to get rid of, and they could make metal art with silverware. And obviously they can have a garden, grow their own fruits and vegetables, use them in recipes. I don't know a whole lot about this, but geocaching is a huge thing. Maybe one of you, do any of you guys know anything about geocaching? I just saw that mentioned a few times and I thought I would add it in here, and honestly, I didn't take time to look it up. But I've seen where families with like older elementary kids go around and they find things, geocaching. So that would be something, maybe students could develop that. They can volunteer at a garden center or a pet store. They could organize a litter cleanup. As I've been traveling around the area, and I've seen this on Facebook too, where there are a lot of old family cemeteries that are overgrown. They're recorded, but they're not, like, they're historically recorded, but maybe they've become overgrown. It would be an easy project for a student to research some of those, and it wouldn't cost them a thing. They could just take a weed eater or something out and clean up one of those cemeteries. I think that would be really cool, and they could do social distancing and the whole deal. Somebody made a comment on a webinar that I was on that during this COVID time, they're having trouble getting community service because they can't go to the food bank because of social distancing. Well, they can do community service on their own. It doesn't have to be in a big group. They can, again, clean up a cemetery. They could contact any of the local churches or some of the other nonprofits. Or the other day I was driving around and I saw a horse rescue, and they had a big sign out. They're looking for volunteers. So if you're in my area, I can tell you where that was. And a lot of the horse farms had to close down because of the virus. But I would think that somebody could go and volunteer at a horse farm and offer to clean out stalls or something. So they could visit a farmer's market where people purchase local products, and they could ask questions to the local farmers or to the people who are selling the products. How did you grow it? Where did it come from? What are the different varieties of things you're selling? So they could do some research at a farmer's market. So here's a whole nother bunch. I just came up with a whole boatload of of non-traditional, if you will, SAE projects. Now, a lot of these are ag-related, but we are teaching agriculture classes, so somehow it would be great if they could come back around and be related to our ag classes. I know, again, with my sister and her nonprofit, they are, with emerald ash borer killing a lot of the ash trees, they are replanting a lot of trees. And it's a community volunteer thing. So maybe there are groups who are planting trees, or they're they're releasing fish into streams, that kind of thing that you could help with. So there's another list of projects. And here's some more. They could create a musical production that focuses on agribusiness. Or, you know, Burger King just put out this ad in the last couple days about the methane the cows give off. Maybe somebody could do a commercial that counters what Burger King said. That would be great, and put that all over Facebook. So I have something about AET I want to tell you guys. Do any of you have any questions about SAE or a project that one of your kids is doing or interested in, or maybe you have a student who you're having trouble figuring out an SAE project for? Jenny, that horse farm that I was talking about, I think is kind of up in your direction. The one that was looking for volunteers.
Is it Catra?
No, it, I'll have to ask Mike what road we were on, to be honest. It might've been 501 North. We were up kind of in that area, north of Lebanon and north of Myerstown. We went, it might've been 419 out of Myerstown.
Okay.
So it had a big sign right on the road, volunteers wanted.
Okay.
I'm guessing it was a rescue. So anybody have any questions about SAE projects or SAE for all? So the thing I wanted to tell you about AET is that last year, somebody asked me about the AET journal, the teacher journal in AET, where you can log in your own journal time during the summer. And if you're in a multi-teacher department, like Jenny, for example, where you have 2 teachers, your journals all go in together, which is kind of awkward. So now you have the opportunity to do an individual teacher login in AET. So if you do the chapter login and you go to profile tab number 2, it's under profile tab number 2, where it's the teacher information. On the right-hand side, it says user account. It's a new tab. And if you go into that new tab, you can put in your email address, and then you can put in a password. So then in the future, when you set up that password, you can log in as you and not as the chapter. So you would still have access to all of the students and all of their SAE projects, just like you went into the chapter account, but you're logging in as the individual teacher. So now the journal, and that kind of, the personal kind of things, you would have access to, which is really awesome. And there's that, all of that is still in the development stage. So it may not be working 100% yet, but they're working on it. So you want to go in and take a look at that. Somebody asked me if I would have the availability to reset those passwords if you forget your password. I'm not sure about that. So for now, don't count on it, and make sure you are recording your password just like you tell your students to. So remember, SAE is student-led. Every student should have some type of SAE project. even if it's the project like I was describing in my mechanics class, where they researched a career that they were interested in, or maybe they researched a skill or something that they wanted to know more about that they brought back and taught to the class. A goal of the Ag Ed Commission and a goal of the PDE is for every student to have some type of SAE project. So we're really going to work toward that this year. Even if it's the foundational SAE project that they do in SAE for All, it could be called, if Bethany is an ag student in my class, it could be called Bethany Matthews Career Search Project, and that could be a foundational project, and she has to, maybe she has to journal 20 hours that she has worked on that project, but that is her SAE project for the year to get her started, and then that might launch into an immersion SAE project. So the project is teacher and mentor supervised, and in AET there's a place that mentors can go in. You can give them access to the students' AET and SAE account, so they can go in and do some assessments and make some comments on their projects. We need to have well-planned goals. We need to do record keeping of financial and journaled hours. That will lead to measurable outcomes. We analyze those outcomes. We keep the students accountable, and they're not necessarily award or degree worthy. So again, we need to separate the FFA part out when we start thinking and talking about SAE projects. But when we come back to FFA, because they're all FFA members with affiliate membership, if a student's goals, if in 9th grade, when you're doing that basic FFA unit, and you do talk about awards and degrees, they need to know that some SAE projects, if they want to go above the state level, those projects must be ag related. So it's very helpful to those kids who, if their brother, sister, cousin, whoever applied and received the American degree, if that's what their goal is, then they need to understand that this is the type of projects that you need to have. So sure, they can do a crochet project, that's fine, but it's not going to count. They need to have projects other than that to qualify for those degrees. So if you're not sure if a project will qualify, or you need ideas to bring Ag Focus into a project, send me an email. And I've already had a few emails this year of kids who are graduating. They want to work at this place. So is this type of job going to be an American degree level or is it going to be approved for the American degree? And a couple of them were no. So it's better to ask at the beginning rather than wait until now. If they're going to apply for the American degree next year, they still have 5 or 6 months during this year, but you need to make sure that those projects are ag related for the American degree. So here's a quote that I found that I thought was pretty cool. It's human nature to be hard on ourselves, but we can overcome this by being thankful for the opportunities that are in front of us. If we continue to work hard, our time will come. Hard work doesn't always pay off when we want it to, but it will pay off eventually. If you do the work, you will get the results. It's that simple. The harder you work at something, the more you will begin to manifest your own luck. And I would add to that, work smarter, not harder. So that might be something SAE related that you can share with your students that might help them out. And I came across this yesterday. This isn't necessarily SAE related, but it could be. So somebody had this sign up in their classroom and it said, ask 3 before me. So first ask yourself the question, ask a friend the question, and then ask another friend, and then ask the teacher. So somebody was saying that in one of the Facebook conversations that they tell the kids information and not 5 minutes later, they're asking them, to repeat the directions. So if you start to use this formula, maybe that will help you prevent kids from, you know, asking you in 5 minutes, what did you want us to do, blah, blah, blah. So what questions do you guys have? Maybe we can share some thoughts back and forth. Is anybody out there? Hello?
We're here, Carol.
Hi,
All right.
guys.
Yeah, there was a lot of great advice from a lot of experience shared there. I hope you're able to take that advice and run with it and implement it in your classrooms with students. We are done a little bit early, but we have plenty of time for questions. So if you do have any questions for Carol about anything she covered here today, or anything else for that matter, please feel free to unmute and ask yourself. You can type them into the chat box. You can pose them in the Q&A pod also if you like.
Before we started, Jesse was asking if I could Zoom with students again this year, and that would be awesome. And I'm available. The Ag Ed Commission is going to fund the SAE specialist position again this year, which is exciting for me. I'm really enjoying doing that. So if there's a time of the day, any time that your kids are available, whether you're in school or not, and you want to set up a Zoom session, I'm completely flexible. If you want to do it in the morning, you want to do it at lunchtime or in the evening, any of that's fine. We just set it up ahead of time. I can send you a Zoom invitation, or you can send one to me. I have a Zoom account, and we can make that work. It can be just you and another student. It can be a group of students. I am very flexible, whatever I can help you with. And Lindsay, if you need help with SAE for All, let me know. I'd be glad to get on with you individually, and we can go through that. And I can chat with you a little bit about how that can work in your program. And it's really student driven, and it's not necessarily you up in front of the class going through it, although it can be, but it can be kids working through it on their own. So yeah. Oh, okay. So just Lindsay, just send me an email or a message, or you may have my phone number. If you don't, I can give it to you. But we can set that up and anytime.
Absolutely. Carol is a fantastic resource that we here in Pennsylvania are extremely lucky to have. So utilize her as often as you can.
Yep. Keep me busy.